The NFL is full of so many what-ifs.
Back into the locker room. Eagles are reporting it is a left knee injury. He is done for today.
A lot has to go right for any NFL player to win the MVP award in any given season.
The Bengals are off to a 5-0 start, and some are making the case that Andy Dalton should be the front runner for MVP.
Unfortunately, several players were putting together historic seasons that were cut short by injuries. Let's dive into 14 unfortunate instances where an NFL player got injured during an MVP caliber season. Carson Wentz, 2017. Wentz was a rock star in his sophomore year for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017. He was the runaway favorite to win MVP honors before tragically suffering a season-ending ACL tear in Week 14 against the Los Angeles Rams. Wentz's season ended right then and there. He won 11 of 13 starts and completed 60.2% of pass attempts for 3,296 yards and 33 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. In comparison, MVP winner Tom Brady played all 16 games and threw 32 touchdowns, just one less than Wentz. No doubt that the MVP was going to Wentz if he had just stayed healthy. Now, Nick Foles memorably came off the bench and led the Eagles to an unlikely Super Bowl 52 championship, defeating Brady and his mighty New England Patriots in the big game. So, yeah, I guess things worked out pretty fine for the Eagles, but you do gotta feel a little bad for Wentz. He was never anything close to his MVP form again after that injury that derailed a career year. Jalen Hurts, 2022. If Hurts didn't suffer a shoulder injury that forced him to miss the Eagles' Week 16 and 17 games, he very likely wins MVP over Patrick Mahomes. The 2020 second-round pick won 14 of 15 starts and completed 66.5% of pass attempts for 3,701 yards and 22 touchdowns against only 6 interceptions. Hurts was ultra-dynamic as a runner too, finishing with 760 rushing yards and 13 rushing scores. Mahomes was the better passer, but Hurts was the superior dual-threat QB, so take your pick. If Hurts had played all 17 games, we bet he would have won MVP over Mahomes. Adding insult to injury, Hurts outplayed Mahomes in Super Bowl 57, but the Eagles' D was nowhere to be seen in a gut-wrenching 38-35 loss. Tom Brady, 2008. Tom Brady's 2008 season only lasted 7.5 minutes, but in case you forgot, he was coming off the best single season ever for a quarterback, so it's not a stretch to believe that he belongs on this list. In 07, Brady threw 50 touchdown passes, a single season record. His Patriots finished 16-0 in the regular season and put up 589 points, which, also a single season record. Their bid at the perfect season, of course, ended with a heartbreaking loss to the New York Giants in Super Bowl 42. It felt like the MVP award would once again come down to TB12 and Peyton Manning entering 2008. But Brady hardly had the opportunity to defend this title. He suffered a torn ACL and a hit from Bernard Pollard 7.5 minutes into the club's Week 1 opener and was immediately ruled out for the year. The Patriots ended up finishing 11-5 with backup Matt Castle. Surely, a healthy Brady would have at the very least been the runner-up to that year's MVP winner in Manning. Dan Marino, 1993. Miami's star quarterback was cooking as always in the first quarter of the 1993 season. His Dolphins started out 4-1-0 with Marino completing 60.7% of pass attempts for 1,218 yards and 8 touchdowns against 3 interceptions. But it all came crashing down when Marino suffered a torn Achilles tendon in the Dolphins' Week 6 road game against the Cleveland Browns. Without Marino, Miami slumped to a 9-7 finish, having dropped each of their final 5 games to miss out on the postseason. Derrick Carr, 2016. It might be the greatest what-if in Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders history. In his 3rd NFL season, Carr was having a career year for Oakland in 2016. He went 12-3 as their starter and completed 63.8% of pass attempts for 28 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. The Raiders were on their way to ending a 14-year playoff drought, and they were even in contention for the AFC's #1 seed all the way until Week 17. Unfortunately, the club's Super Bowl dream crashed abruptly in Week 16 against the Indianapolis Colts. Oakland was leading 33-14 in the 4th quarter when Carr took a sack from Trent Cole.
It's broke! It's broke! It's broke! It's broke!
It was later revealed to be a broken fibula for the Raiders' star QB. The Raiders went on to win the game, but they were heavily criticized for keeping Carr in a game that was essentially out of reach for Indy. And then, in the Raiders' Week 17 game against the Denver Broncos, backup Matt McGloin suffered a shoulder injury that forced the team to start Connor Cook in their wildcard game against the Houston Texans. Oakland stood no chance in that contest as they fell 27-14. Matt Ryan went on to win MVP honors with Tom Brady finishing 2nd. Carr, a contender all season long, finished third in MVP voting. Derrick Henry, 2021. King Henry won his second straight rushing title as well as Offensive Player of the Year honors in 2020, having racked up 2,027 rushing yards to go along with the league-leading 17 rushing touchdowns. Entering 2021, there was no doubt who the best running back in football was. Henry got off to a blistering start in 2021, rushing for a ridiculous 937 yards and 10 touchdowns in only 8 games. He was about to hit 1,000 yards rushing by early November. But just when Henry looked poised to win a third straight rushing title and potentially MVP honors, he suffered a Jones fracture in his right foot during a Week 8 contest against the Colts. Tennessee miraculously finished as the #1 seed in the AFC, and Henry returned in time for the postseason, but he was ineffective in their heartbreaking loss to the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round. At his pace, Henry was about to push for a second straight 2K rushing season. Had he done that, our money would have been on him winning MVP over Aaron Rodgers. Dak Prescott, 2020. Okay, so the Cowboys were 2-3 in games Prescott played in 2020. But prior to that gruesome ankle fracture that ended his season in Week 5 against the New York Giants, number 4 was on a historic pace. He completed 68% of pass attempts for 1,856 yards and 9 touchdowns against 4 picks. More notably, he averaged 371.2 passing yards per game. So he was on pace to throw for just under 6,000 passing yards. Dallas, unfortunately, crumbled once Prescott went down to injury and finished with a miserable 6-10 record. Yet, another reminder of his value to the organization. Kurt Warner, 2000. Warner was coming off a historically great season in 1999, one that saw him win MVP honors and the Super Bowl in the same year. Sadly, Warner and St. Louis Rams' chances of repeating as champs were dealt a massive blow when he broke his finger in a Week 8 game against Kansas City. Before the injury, Warner had 18 touchdowns and his Rams were off to a scorching 6-1 start. Backup Trent Green played well in Warner's absence, but the Rams still weren't the same without their future Hall of Famer at QB. The Rams finished 10-6 and fell to the New Orleans Saints in the wildcard round. With Warner injured, it was fittingly his teammate and running back Marshall Faulk who went on to win 2000 MVP honors.
I really believe had Kurt stayed healthy, that offense in 2000 would have obliterated every team offensive record for a single season on the books.
Andy Dalton, 2015. The Cincinnati Bengals were coming off a 4th straight one-and-done outing in the postseason, leading to questions about Dalton's ability to lead the franchise to the promised land. Dalton certainly looked like a man on a mission in year 5, however. Unfortunately, Dalton's season ended abruptly in a Week 14 home contest against the Steelers when he suffered a fractured thumb in his right throwing hand. His season ended with an MVP-like stat line of 3,250 passing yards and 25 touchdowns against only 7 interceptions and 3 rushing scores. Second stringer A.J. McCarron, to his credit, fared pretty well in Dalton's place. The Bengals season ended with a heartbreaking loss to Pittsburgh in the wildcard round, however, by a final score of 18-16. You gotta think if Dalton was the QB in that game, since he would have won. And then, who knows? Aaron Rodgers, 2017. Rodgers led the Packers to a red-hot 4-1 start, highlighted by a last-second thriller of a W over the Dallas Cowboys at Jerry World in Week 5. Through those first 5 games, he had 13 touchdowns against only 3 interceptions. But in a highly anticipated Week 6 road game against the Minnesota Vikings, Rodgers suffered a fractured collarbone after taking a big hit from Anthony Barr. A-Rod missed the next 7 games before returning in Week 15 against the Carolina Panthers. Rodgers had 3 touchdowns and 3 picks in a 31-24 loss. And the Packers shut him down for the final 2 games. 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 97.2 QB rating. Yeah, Rodgers would have given both Carson Wentz and Tom Brady a run for the MVP award if he had stayed healthy all season long. Lamar Jackson, 2022. After missing the Baltimore Ravens' final 5 games in 2021, Jackson came back onto the scene with a vengeance. His Ravens were sitting pretty at 7-4-0 heading into their Week 3 showdown against the Denver Broncos. Early in the game, Jackson suffered a knee injury that wasn't initially deemed as serious. Pretty quickly, it was ruled that his injury would not be season-ending. So Jackson went on the IR with an MVP-like stat line of 2,242 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and 764 rushing yards to go along with 3 rushing scores. Unfortunately, Jackson's injury indeed wound up being season-ending. The Ravens narrowly squeaked onto the postseason with a 10-7 record, only to drop a close game to the rival Cincinnati Bengals in the wildcard round. Ray Lewis, 2002. The last defensive player to win MVP honors, New York Giants legend Lawrence Taylor way back when in 1986. But if his shoulder injury didn't limit him to just 5 games in 2002, maybe Ravens legendary linebacker Ray Lewis would have snapped that streak. Despite appearing in only 5 games that year, Lewis had 2 interceptions, 3 pass defenses, 1 forced fumble, and 58 combined tackles. He could have easily won what would have been the second Defensive Player of the Year award of his illustrious career, if not for that injury. And, very potentially, MVP honors as well. Drew Brees, 2019. Brees retired as the NFL's all-time passing yards and passing TDs leader, so it remains a shock to us that he never won an MVP award. 2019 felt like it could finally be Brees' year. He had 370 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in the New Orleans Saints' Week 1 home win against the Houston Texans. But in Week 2 against the Los Angeles Rams, the no-call rematch by the way, Brees suffered a torn ligament in his right thumb and missed 5 games. Incredibly, backup Teddy Bridgewater went a perfect 5-0 as Brees' replacement in those games. Brees would play 11 games altogether and complete 74.3% of his passes, the second best single-season mark ever, just shy of the record he set a year earlier, for 27 touchdowns and 4 picks. It's not a stretch to think that Brees could have won MVP honors over Lamar Jackson if he didn't miss those 5 games. Carson Palmer, 2014. Palmer led the Arizona Cardinals to a thrilling Week 1 comeback win against the San Diego Chargers, but the shoulder injury sidelined him for the next 3 games. He returned in Week 6 and won each of his next 5 starts. Sadly though, Palmer tore his ACL in the Cardinals' Week 10 win over the St. Louis Rams. So his season ended with 1,626 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions for a QB rating of 95.6. Arizona was 6-0 with Palmer, but just 5-5 without him. They still qualified for the playoffs, but they were absolutely no match for the Carolina Panthers in the wildcard round. But which other NFL players got injured during an MVP caliber season? Let us know in the comments section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.